So when I started writing, I was not a planner at all. I wrote Divergent without an outline, and then I had to create outlines to like present the series as a series to my publisher. And I wrote like one pagers, like real just a basic synopsis to prove to them that there was like expansion possibility for the story. But I didn't make nearly enough of a plan. And I ran into some trouble with my third book in the series when I had to like, among other problems, I had like a chapter where there's a lot of revelations at once. So basically it's like, it's just like 3 chapters of info dump. And there was no way around it. Like I had written myself into some weird corners and I had to deal with the decisions I'd made, and it was not awesome. And at that point, I was like, okay, I'm just going to do the best I can here. And then next time, I am not letting this happen again. So I became an outliner. Yeah. So now I write really detailed outlines. There are some people who really, really go for it, but mine, they'll be like 13 single space pages. So they're long. And they kind of go, they just form like kind of a roadmap for my writing.
What is up, everybody? You're listening to episode 104 of SFF Addicts. I'm your host, Adrian M. Gibson, and welcome to your weekly dive into the world of science fiction, fantasy, and writing craft. Joining me as always, my co-host, the Chewie to my Han Solo, the Joker to my Commander Shepard, my dear MJ Kuhn. How are you, MJ?
Hi, I am great. How are you?
Doing spiffy, thank you. If you want to support my girl in the Thorin Food Fund, my little chunky boy, go get Among Thieves, the Blue Baby, MJ's debut novel, and Thick Ass Thieves, the Green Baby, the sequel. If you want a complete duology full of heists and fun stuff and just a raucous good time, it's damn good. And go support MJ because she's the best. That's all.
Raucous good time. I love that. I'm using that pull quote next. You can also support the lovely Adrian M. Gibson and check out Mushroom Blues, his Blue Baby.
My Blue Baby. For
a lovely detective story filled with body horror and mushrooms and all of that good stuff. And cool interior art that Mr. Adrian
that I designed myself.
So, yeah, there you go.
Oh, also MJ's Ultimate Story Bible is out today. Or it's out now when you hear
this. It's been out, but it's out.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Go to MJ's Amazon
promoting stuff.
That's why we're here to promote each other. It's all good. As well, a quick note for everyone out there listening or watching: the official SFF Addicts Patreon and merch store are live, so go check that out in the descriptions below. Also, don't forget to rate and review the podcast on your favorite podcast app, and subscribe to the FanFiAddict YouTube channel, where this and every other episode of the show is available in full video. And now, joining us once again is the wonderful Veronica Roth, best-selling author of the Divergent series, Arch-Conspirator, the brand new novella, One Among Crows, which is out today. Go get it. It's so much more. There's Veronica's teal baby.
The teal baby.
Go get the teal baby. Welcome back, Veronica.
Thank you. Feels good to be back.
Feels good to be back after that long break.
It's been so long.
All right. A heads up, this is part 2 of our 2-part chat with Veronica, so I recommend checking out part 1 to get to know her better. Today, though, we're bringing a bit of structure to your messy, messy lives as we talk about outlining your story. Before we dig deeper into the episode, a quick word from our sponsor.
Strap in for a fast-paced heist that rockets through the gritty void of outer space. Chloe's Kingdom by Gregory Michael is a pulse-pounding sci-fi adventure that keeps readers on their toes from start to finish. Let's dive right into the story. Chloe Espinosa is a wild-haired petty thief aboard the Kingdom, a drifting city spaceship. Once rich but now poor, Chloe is determined to break free from the honeycombs and return to her life in the gardens. Only one problem. She hardly has enough coin for a burrito, making a lavish apartment seem as distant as the stars. All that might change, however, when Chloe is offered a heist that could make her unimaginably rich. But she can't break into the impenetrable coin vault alone. We have a young mastermind who can't let go of her past, a mathematical genius in desperate need of coin, a privileged kid from the gardens with a debt to pay, a bartender who's serving revenge, a mischievous raccoon with bottomless appetite, and a battered soul who's been wronged by the council. Their plan? To rob the treasury and bring down the corrupt council. But in a game where the stakes are jail or death, every move could be their last. A top 15 Amazon bestseller and number 2 in hot new releases, Chloe's Kingdom is packed with heart-stopping action, mind-bending twists, and an unforgettable adventure through the stars. This is a must-read for fans of sci-fi and heist thrillers. Chloe's Kingdom is available now exclusively on Amazon, free on Kindle Unlimited, or you can grab your copy on Kindle, paperback, or hardcover today.
And now, enjoy the rest of this episode of SFF Addicts. So, we did a masterclass on plotting 101 with Greta Kelly back in October, but this episode we're going to dive deeper into the actual process of outlining itself. So, Veronica, if you could tell us what your definition of an outline is, why is it an integral part of your writing process?
Well, it wasn't always, and I think that's the important thing to note. So when I started writing, I was not a planner at all. I wrote Divergent without an outline, and then I had to create outlines to like present the series as a series to my publisher. And I wrote like one-pagers, like real, just a basic synopsis to prove to them that there was like expansion possibility for the story.
Series potential.
Yes, exactly. That great buzzword that we all love.
Great
series
buzzword.
Potential.
Horrible.
I know, it's so terrible. But I didn't make nearly enough of a plan. And I ran into some trouble with my third book in the series when I had to, like, among other problems, I had like a chapter where there's a lot of revelations at once. So basically it's just like 3 chapters of info dump. And there was no way around it. Like I had written myself into some weird corners and I had to deal with the decisions I'd made, and it was not awesome. And at that point I was like, okay, I'm just going to do the best I can here. And then next time I am not letting this happen again. So I became an outliner. Yeah. So now I write really detailed outlines. There are some people who really, really go for it, but mine, they'll be like 13 single space pages. So they're long. And they kind of they just form like kind of a roadmap for my writing. But I also re-outline often. So they're extremely flexible outlines. So what I'm talking about today, I think what I will be talking about, not in a lecture form, but what I will inevitably be talking about today is like what it's like to be an outliner who's not like a type A personality. Like I'm not super organized. Like I love to improvise in my writing. And so I'm not like your, I think, typical like outline person, but I do find them super helpful. So
this is good because we have you as a contrast to MJ, who is very type A.
Tell me
aggressively. Yeah, no, but I love this perspective because I do that. I'm one of the insane outliners that you've alluded to here, probably. But I think that the misconception a lot of people have about people
Veronica,
that
you
outline
have like the intrigued face of like a therapist right now. You're just like, oh,
you know, you're like, oh,
what do you think that is?
let's heal this inner wound. But like, I think a lot of people, when they hear, you're writing off of an outline, they're like, oh, well, that's got to suck the fun out of it, right? Like there's no space to play. And that's so not true. And so I love that that's an approach that you're talking about. Let's start, like, let's pretend you're starting a new project. You're, whatever. Point 1. How do you typically begin your outlines? Do you start with a synopsis? Do you start with like a pitch paragraph and then expand it? So there's like the snowflake method, or, what's your method? How does it start?
It starts with a list of scenes. So actually it starts with a playlist. Let's be real. So yes. I start to get the feeling that I've got an idea, but I don't usually know what it is. And at that point I make a playlist. It is vibes only. So I have one. I have one on my Spotify right now that's just called Post-Apocalyptic Road Trip. I have had it for like a year, at least. I don't know what this story is, but it will be something. And it has a vibe. But I don't know.
For the record, as a casual Spotify listener that loves to just find people's random playlists, I would just listen to that from the title. So I already love this book, though it is yet unwritten.
Yep, someday. I mean, maybe it'll be a book. Maybe it'll be a book one day. Maybe not. But right now, it's just vibes.
Veronica, I turned my playlist, my vibes playlist, into an actual playlist for my book. And at
Like
the
a
back of my
read-along?
book, I have a QR code, and you can just scan the code and then go check it out.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Jeez, I gotta
Get your publisher to do that from now on.
Can
Be
I
like,
copy?
QR code in that shit so that people can just go to my vibes playlist. It's perfect.
I do have like all my book playlists up on my Spotify at Veronica Roth, in case anyone is curious. But they're usually super edited because I don't put my most embarrassing music on them.
Like, let me curate this.
and if you go look at them, you'll be like, what's your more embarrassing music? Because it's pretty embarrassing. But anyway.
I love it.
Yes. So then I put on the playlist and I go for a walk, basically. And while I walk, I envision scenes, and then I come back and I make like a list of all the ideas that I have. That's where the outline starts. Should I get
I
I
like
love
this.
that.
Yeah, let's get more specific.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I identify like which scenes are like the big ones. These are like scaffolding. They're the scenes, they're not like the most fun scenes or the scenes you're looking forward to the most, or even the most like emotionally resonant ones. They're the ones that you literally need in order to like finish the story. So like the plot doesn't work without them, basically. So I try and identify like which ones those are, and I kind of position them in an order that makes sense to me. And then I start like filling in the gaps, basically. So it's just a big list at first. And then I start writing an actual outline where I use sentences, like this starts here, with this person doing this, like that kind of thing. And that's when it grows to like 12 pages. Yeah.
Okay, so this, I actually really like this. It's like when you're creating those like pivotal moments, those pivotal scenes, do you find that it ends up fitting into like a 3-act structure or a 5-act structure or something that is maybe a little bit more identifiable for people who love to be like,
yes,
going by like specific, like save the cat. Or 3-act structure, that kind of thing. Do you find it's like quite random in that sense, or do you find that it like unconsciously ends up fitting into a mold that you're familiar with based on the stuff that you've consumed?
Well, we definitely like, as we're storytellers, as a people, like, human beings, I mean. And so I think we have like an innate sense of like how stories work. And for me, the most useful of the paradigms you're talking about is I think it's Freytag's pyramid, where it's just like rising action, climax, falling action, the end. And that's the only thing I can wrap my head around.
It's just pyramids.
Yeah, it's like this guy. 3-act structure, I look up every time I try and like maybe lightly dabble in screenwriting, which is almost never, and I hate it. But I look it up every time and I forget it every time. So I just can't. That's not how my brain makes sense of stories. And Save the Cat, when I looked at it, I was like, well, that sounds like fun for some people, but I just can't.
That's exactly it. For some people, I'm like, this sounds like way too much work.
You know what I find
actually writing a book.
The way I find it to be the most helpful is sometimes I'll be like, what's wrong with this outline? Like it's missing something, it's not right. And then I look at the Save the Cat beat sheet and I'm like, oh. Like it's missing, the dark night of the soul or whatever. Right. Like you need those moments. They're important. So I think it can be helpful, even if you're not an MJ.
Yeah. We're gonna divide. I'm kind of in the middle. We'll call it like the MJs and the Veronicas, and me just chilling in the middle of that.
And then you got your discovery
spectrum.
writers in a completely different conversation.
Just fucking off to somewhere else because they're not even in this category.
How does that work, guys? God bless.
We did an
I've
episode
tried
with
so many
Hannah
times.
Long on discovery writing, and it just made my heart and my brain ache. I was like, I can't.
Yeah, well, I tried to discovery write, and I went to her for help, and I was like, okay, so I'm about to start maybe drafting, but what do I need to know before but what do you know before you get started? And she's like, I don't know, I usually have like a character and an image.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. I mean, I used to do that, I guess, but
I was gonna say, you just said that you wrote Divergent.
That's kind of like the vibes.
To some extent, discovery writing. You are a wizard too. Don't even pretend.
I think you have to okay, so it helps if you are a fast writer, because then actually, I think the more we dig into this, the more horrified you're going to become with how much. So like, I'm writing this really big fantasy thing right now. It's longer than, it hasn't been, it's not like an official thing, but I'm working on it. And I have thrown away more than I have kept in the draft at this point. Like, I think the draft is 240,000 words, so it's already far too long. But the deleted stuff is like at least 260,000 words. So I just write, like, the discovery part is like, you write it, you see how it feels, and then you throw it away. Like, you just have to be willing to throw it away. And I think that's like, if you're a slower writer or more methodical, that sounds like a nightmare. But if you're like, whatever, yeah, then it doesn't cost you as much. So of course it's easier, Yeah.
Yeah. Because
I still do that.
I didn't discovery write necessarily my like Fungalverse, which is like my shared universe. It was kind of like I discovery drew.
Fungalverse. Mm-hmm.
Like, I know, right? So good.
I just like discovery drew, like illustrated, and did like tons of world building. So I feel like I got over that, and by the time I actually got to the story, I'm like, okay, I need to like do the thing, as opposed to just like spending ages, because I am a bit more methodical when it comes to my writing. I feel like I would spend way too goddamn long discovery writing an entire manuscript. Like, that would just drive me insane.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I wanted to ask you, when it comes to the outlining process, because we mentioned like how you kind of did things with Divergent and how your process has evolved. Where do you find during that process, like, you've gone through the vibes and you starting to imagine these scenes, how does the world and how do the characters start seeping into that?
Well, I did like this little world building class like last year on Twitch, that I called the soup, basically. So for me, like, because a lot of times people frame it as like, where do you start with character or with plot, right? That's like a pretty standard writer question that we receive. And for me, I'm like, I don't know. Like, this always causes my brain to short circuit. I'm like, I can't answer that. I have no idea.
Right.
Yeah, like, it all happens simultaneously is not an answer anyone wants to hear. But I think the soup is a good way to explain it. Like, I just start with a little, like a piece of carrot, which is like probably a character or a moment of a plot. Usually that's like an image, whatever, and then it makes me make a decision about something else. So like, I want to write about like the book that just came out, When Among Crows. The first image that came to me is this man pulling a sword out of his spine. Like, I was like, that,
which is like fucking
that's a
visceral.
metal ass image.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. The Nature is
And
Metal
it involves
subreddit.
just as much skin and tearing as you would imagine.
Oh yeah, it's mega gross, my friends. Anyway, so that image, I was like, okay, well, why? Like, why would, like, what kind of person would volunteer for that every time they want to have a weapon, And so that made me make decisions about the character, like this sort of like self-destructive, but maybe like self-sacrificial person. And then it was like, well, what kind of world requires a person to become that way? Like, that's a messed up way to be, right? We don't love that for our friends, like, please don't sacrifice yourself or destroy yourself. So anyway, it's like, what kind of system is he a part of that makes him feel like this is a good way to be? Like, people become the way they are because they feel like it's like they need to survive something. And so then that makes me make decisions about the world. So that's kind of like how the soup works. Like, it just starts to like meld. You know how soup is, like, a week after you make it. Well, not a week, maybe a couple days after you make it. It's the most delicious.
Yeah, you should be checking on that shit if you're leaving it for a week.
God, if you follow me on social media, you'll realize that my food safety practices are really messed up. Like, we don't need to tug at that thread.
If Veronica ever has a side project as a restaurant, please
don't do it. Yeah.
Be concerned. I love that, though. I really do enjoy the soup metaphor because it's helpful to conceptualize how it works, because they kind of all intermingle.
Or if you're really into fantasy, it could be stew, whatever's.
Yeah,
there you go. The stew method.
Yeah.
Have a nice bowl of it with your mug of ale.
Like every stereotypical fantasy meal.
I mean, what do
Yeah,
people even
exactly.
eat in fantasy worlds if they're not eating stew? Just a hunk of
Some
bread.
Right? Like,
hard,
what do
some
you
fucking
do?
hard
Yeah,
ass
with
bread
a
in
hunk of
stew.
bread, maybe some cheese.
Yeah.
It makes me
Taters.
hungry talking about it, though. It does for me.
I know.
I want a hunk of bread and some
It's
cheese.
good at medieval times.
Oh my god.
All right, guys, let's go. But so a lot of your stories, and when you wanted to talk about outlining, I was really excited. I mean, I was really excited because I'll talk about outlining for 30 days. But I was excited because seeing your work, a lot of it is very complex. It's multi-layered. You have a lot of character arcs that are kind of growing and blossoming simultaneously. And I am always so fascinated talking to writers that achieve that really delicate balance so well. And I think, how do you approach that in the outline? And, what techniques or tools or whatever are you using when you're in your outline phase to keep track of all those different threads and make sure that they wind together the way they do?
Well, I love this because I feel like when you say you outline, and I think this might be true for you, MJ, because you're on the far side of the spectrum. Like you kind of have this idea that like you do all the thinking in advance and the outline, and then the writing of it is just kind of like the manifesting of that thinking. But if you're a sloppy outliner like moi, that stuff does not, like, I do not think all that stuff out in advance. Like, I think I do. And then I start writing and I'm like, oh God, like we've lost track of this person. Like something needs to happen with this person, or I'll discover something like, oh, this dynamic is really compelling. Like I should do that. Like, usually the romance is that for me in the book. Like I just try on the chemistry with the characters and see where it goes. And then if one develops, and it usually does, because I'm basic that way. I love love. Then I go with it, and then it becomes a part of the story in revision. So I'm always re-outlining, I think, is kind of my answer to your question. I'm like flexible, very flexible, and also like I'm not capable, just because of the way my brain works, I'm not capable of like thinking everything through beforehand. Like I think that's like what is intimidating to people about outlining. It's like, how do I think about all that shit? It's like, you don't have to. Got good news for you.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, because
so it sounds like you. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was. This kind of notion of like re-outlining, I think is really. It's really useful because like when it comes to my outlining process, like usually I'll do something similar to you. I'll have like scenes, and then I'll kind of like figure out how I can conjoin them into chapters or kind of like distinguish them in that sense. And then through the writing process is when I'll figure out how the outline, how applicable it is to what is happening in the story. And if there's a moment where there's like that discovery moment of, oh shit, like this character wants to go in a way that is completely different than what I put into the outline, then it helps for me to explore that. And if it doesn't work, then I come back. But if it does work, then it takes me off in a new direction that is usually better than what I put into the outline. And like I have whole characters who I didn't have in the outline, and the first draft created them, and I realized you're really cool and I want you like more embedded into this story. So for you, like how much space do you allow, like talking about that flexibility and that sort of re-outlining process? Let's dig into that a little bit about how you're able to make adjustments on the fly as you're taking your outline and kind of translating it, manifesting it into a first draft. And like I think some people might think that an outline is the final word, that you can't veer away from the outline. Oh, how dare you, blah blah blah. It's like, no, we can be flexible with this.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you
into
make
this a
it,
little more.
right? So it's not the
Yeah.
Bible. It's just your
I'm
plan.
sure the Bible even went through some revisions.
Yeah, no,
after
that's
the
not a
outline
good
was done, too.
example, I guess, depending on how you relate to the Bible. But like, let's pretend that you relate to it as like an absolute book of fact, as some people do. Like, it is not that. An outline is not that. Even MJ agrees. She was nodding.
Yeah, right. Yeah, even the crazy one.
Yeah. So, I give myself a lot of flexibility, and I actually like really love Scrivener for this reason. It's the program I
Nice.
use
Yeah,
to
yeah.
do drafting. And I don't think like you've got to use it or something. That would be a silly thing to say. But I like it because you can just like keep the old scene and also try the new scene without feeling like you're going to get lost or whatever. So I'll just like create a little new subdocument and try something on, write half of it and see how it goes, and then go back to the old one and compare them, like which one is better. And it's a
Veronica,
lot of
you're speaking to me so deeply. I do the same thing where I have
maybe,
like I have a folder. I have a folder of like a chapter, and then I'll make like I'll duplicate like a scene
yeah,
or a chapter or whatever, and be like, okay, how can I tweak this, or can I go in a completely new direction?
Interesting.
And it doesn't
This is
work.
the
But
first
then I have
conversation that's made me curious about Scrivener because I've always
yeah,
thought it was
but it's like
kind
it's
of useless.
basically like you can create like like a folder with sort of like sub documents of each chapter, and you can just have like version 1, version 2, like, you know, just fuck around with that. It's amazing.
yeah, I love it. It makes me feel like free to do that because then I don't have to make a whole new document. Um, and then I can still compile like a nice, neat little draft at the end without like having to go through and be like, okay, where did I add that weird thing? Um, yeah,
You could name the sub document weird thing, and then you know
I guess.
that's the
And
weird
you
thing.
find it so easily.
You can find
Yeah.
it so easily.
That would be great if I knew it was weird at the moment, in the moment, but I don't. Yes. I also think like this is like it's a mindset too. Like I'm super willing to throw things out. Like I think the probably biggest example I have of this is that my second series, Carve the Mark, the beginning used to be 100 pages longer. And my editor at the time was like, I think you need to lose 100 pages. She like pointed out where, and I was like, oh, Catherine, this is devastating.
100 is so much.
But I was also like, okay, like I'm going to do an outline to kind of see how it feels. Like if I wrote it this way, how would it feel? And when I did it, I was like, yeah, she's right. Like I can do it and it'll be better. And the funny thing is people still think that book starts slow. But I'm like, imagine what
Oh,
it could have been
you
before.
wish.
Yeah, you wish it started slow. Jeez. But I think that was like the best example of this. But like, I'll fully delete a character, add a character, change an ending, like entertain any notion. Like, and outlining helps with that because you can kind of write it out, but it doesn't cost you as much. And you can kind of see, like, you can't always, like, sometimes you have to try things on for size, or at least I do. But like in the outline, you can kind of see what the impact of it will be, and like the ripple effect it will have. Because sometimes when like editors or critique partners or beta readers or whatever make suggestions, like they're not thinking about the way it ripples through the rest of the story, but you can in an outline, which is really handy.
And even if you get to the end of a first draft, you can also reverse outline and kind of like
Yeah.
like you had to do with your editor, be like, okay, if I cut these 100 pages, how would that look? You
Mhm.
can deconstruct what you've written in order to figure out like what might not be working, essentially, or, you know, like this part seems too slow, and you know, I think that's where something like pacing can kind of come into it. You can like use the outline to kind of figure out, like, when I took Mushroom Blues from its initial novella outline, which was like 13, 14 chapters, and then I looked at that because I wrote the outline way before I ended up writing the book.
Mhm.
I looked at my outline and I was like, okay, stupid me from like 2 years ago put in every chapter like
Like 4 plot
two
points.
2 to 5 scenes. And I'm just like, how did I not think that this was ridiculous? And so then I separated that and I was like, okay, take out all the chapters and just have the scenes on their own, and ended up turning that into a 40 chapter book.
Huh.
And so there are ways in which you can kind of like use your outline to think about pacing, you know, like you can kind of, as you start to write more, I don't know how it is for the both of you, where you think like, okay, like your conceptualization of a scene kind of already gives you an idea of how long that might need to be, or how you might be pacing that in relation to everything around it. So Veronica, can you walk us through a bit like your process for, setting up things like chapters and pacing
Yeah.
in the outline process?
So I love bringing it up as a kind of revision tool, because that's how we're talking like there's like 6 outlines by the time I'm done with my book, but I love it for that, because then when you go back to your rough draft and you look at, like, you force yourself to summarize like what each scene is doing, then you realize you've written a bunch of scenes twice. Like if you write long, or maybe you haven't written, or you've been trying to do too much in one. Like you can kind of, when you force yourself to boil it down, you're like, oh, okay. So that only needed to be one. Like I think in the draft I'm working on, I'm kind of lightly revising it now just so it's like intelligible. And I was like, why did we have like 3 sword fights in the beginning of this? Like there only needs to be 1 sword fight. That seems really obvious to me now. And it just has to do more work, that one scene. So you have to like pick the one, like which scene is the one that does the most work. Anyway, sorry, you asked me like an actual question and I went on a tangent.
About pacing.
About pacing. Yeah.
But also, like, kind of building on what you're saying, you're like, we were talking about YA last episode, about how sometimes you have like a single scene that is like trying to accomplish like 5
has
things.
to do so much lifting. Yeah.
But I think when obviously, like, depending on the genre that you're writing for, you can probably like you can achieve multiple things with a single scene in order to kind of like better control your pacing too. But
Yeah.
what are some things that you do in order to kind of like set yourself up for, a first draft or a revision using the outline?
Well, with a first draft, like I'm really working on letting myself go with it. Like this book turned out super long because I was like, you just need to relax, like just write what seems right at the time. And then, because I think the reason I'm trying to encourage myself to do that is that I find it very easy to shorten things, like combine scenes and mash them together, or find a shorter way from like A to B or whatever. And so because I know that that's like a skill that I have, I'm like, it's good to write long, then get it all out, because then you'll know all the information you need and you can like, it's so much easier to make it shorter. So you have to kind of know which writer you are, because some people they write short, and they need to like slow down and explore more. And so this method would maybe not work as well for them. Like, I don't know. I don't know what it's like to be that way. That's not really how I am.
MJ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Chronic
like,
underwriter here.
I need to tell myself like, which things I need to dwell on or whatever. That might be the position you're in. But for me, like, so I think a lot of writing is knowing and accepting the kind of writer you are and choosing to work with yourself instead of against yourself, because you have some idea of like how it's supposed to work. Like it's not supposed to work anyway. Everyone gets to the same end point, but they do it in like wildly different ways. So there's no like one way to work. But
yeah, that's like the most fun part about this show, is talking to tons of different writers. Many like yourself are very successful and have great books and accomplish that in radically different ways. And I think something really fun that this conversation has made me kind of conceptualize about outlining that I haven't before is that, I think a lot of times people view outline and lining as being very rigid and very whatever, but it is a way to be very flexible if you really think about it. When you were talking about...
It's like this is something that I always thought about when I was tattooing, when I illustrate. It's like the restrictions of the medium that you're working in actually provide you with the creative freedom that you need in order to create the thing. And so in order to have those, in order to kind of like give yourself more freedom, you almost need to put more constraints on it. So that
that's
you
a piece
kind
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm thinking almost, because I'm a chronic underwriter. I'm a slow writer. And so for me, I want to chase all those ideas. I want to explore all the different little avenues and channels. I just do it through my outline, because if I did it through drafting, it would take me 2 years to write a first draft.
That makes a lot of sense.
This is really a fun conversation for me in that regard. But I want to dial into themes. We talk about themes. And themes, I always get stressed out when people ask me about themes. Like, how did you come up with this theme? And it's like, I don't know. It just happened in the book. But does theme play a role in your outline? What do you think about theme when you're outlining? Or is it something that, maybe you create the outline and then before you start writing, you look back on the outline and go, shit, there's this theme is here. Let me make sure I enrich that as I write.
No, I'm with you.
What's your
I'm
kind of
like,
advice there?
themes?
Yeah. Like if they're
No.
there,
Accidents.
it's a surprise to me.
Yes, exactly. I think if we're talking about like the initial outline, like, no, I am not thinking about themes. But after the rough draft, that's like when I start to use the outline almost as like a diagnosis method, where you're like, okay, I can observe a lot of things about pacing here, but I can also observe the things that I'm clearly obsessed with in this, in this book. And like, that's when you can kind of observe themes, I think. And that's how I always think about it, is as an observation, almost like looking at your own brain. Because I really want the things that are in the story to feel organic, not like forced onto it. So I never know. I love that quote about, I don't remember whose quote this is, but it's, how do I know what I think until I see what I say? And that's how I think about writing. It's like, it's both conscious and unconscious. Like consciously, yes, I'm telling this story that I have planned out. Unconsciously, I am communicating something that's bothering me or that I have questions about or that I really care about. And when I'm done, I'll see what that is, but not while I'm planning it. Like that's just, I can't do that at all. The outline is just like the most pathetic attempt that I ever have at like trying to make a plan. I'm not a good planner. So yeah, sloppy outlining is my
I think that's great though, because if someone is scared off about outlining, if someone is scared off by outlining because they're like, well, I don't know if I can plan a theme in advance. You know what I mean? Like I think that's really great insight that you've just given, where it's like, well, you don't have to have all of the pieces up front to really benefit from using an outline. You can use it to be your scaffolding. Yeah, I think that's great.
And I think like the themes that end up becoming the most genuine explorations in a story are the ones, like you said, they're kind of like delving into your subconscious, and they're the ones that are infused throughout the story in such a way where you're not actively trying to preach about this specific thing. And preachy is like one word that MJ and I put into our prep doc, is like,
it's like, how do you avoid that? Because you do avoid it, and the themes are there, but they don't seem over heavy-handed. It's like, how do you do that?
I'm super glad to hear that. Yeah, I think one of the keys...
That's like the biggest compliment. Your books are not preachy.
God, I'm so relieved to hear that. But I think, honestly, like, I think writing's an expression of priorities a lot of the time. And if you really don't want to be preachy, it's hard to become preachy. I think, like, people who are comfortable with it are the ones who, like, might struggle with it. But I never write from a place of certainty. So I think that's part of it. It's like, I don't know what I think about these things. I know they're complicated and I'm curious about them. And that's where it starts.
And the act of writing is kind of your way to unravel that.
Yeah. And God, if I ever like wind up at an answer, I mean, I think it very rarely happens. Let's put it that way. A clear answer.
Yeah. And another aspect of I think, something that for me personally, like I've kind of tried to implement in the outlining process, but it never hits as hard as it does when I'm drafting, is plot twists and reveals and stuff like that. And obviously, like you were mentioning earlier, you have these sort of landmark moments throughout your story. One of those could be a plot twist. But a lot of the time I feel like plot twists end up being sort of a spontaneous maturation of the story as it comes out through the first draft and then through revisions where you can fine tune that stuff. But for you, how do you ensure that these moments are both surprising and satisfying for readers? How do they kind of fit in throughout your process? And how do you know, like, how to foreshadow them effectively, how to leave breadcrumbs and that kind of stuff?
Well, it's like, it's happened so many different ways. So I think that's probably important to note. Like sometimes I'll plan one and then it's just garbage by the time I get to it. And I'm like, no, like we got to find a new way out of this. That twist is not going to work. But sometimes they do work as planned. Um, and often it's like it's backwards and forwards too. So like you land on a moment that feels authentic, but you know you haven't set it up properly. Then you look back at what you've done and figure out how to change what you already did to set it up properly. So this like is the I used to talk to school groups a lot when I was writing for younger readers, and I feel like this is the demystifying thing that is so sad to tell to tell students of a
Feel like
certain age.
it was like it's all constructed.
Yeah, like it's reverse engineered, my friend. Like I'm so sorry to tell you that this wasn't planned from the start. Like I went back to the old scene and I was like, I'm gonna put this foreshadowing here. And they're like, no, our teachers were right about foreshadowing being real. It's like, yeah.
That was the real heartbreaker, that the teachers were right.
Yeah, it's like when they ask you to analyze this, like, congratulations, they are right. Yeah.
And you got to do it with like a wide-eyed stare, be like, yes, they were right.
They were right. I'm so sorry.
They were right.
But oh shit, I had a thing. I don't know. It's gone.
Like a good plot twist.
Oh yeah.
Oh, no.
Like, it's a weird calculus, and I think this is when like critique partners become really helpful, because you're like, did I do enough? Like, because the balance is very fine. Like, because you can insert like a detail early on that people like notice, but don't notice too much. And then when it pays off, they're like, oh my God, that was so cool. But sometimes you do that and it's way too obvious. Or sometimes you do it and it's way too subtle and nobody's going to pick up on that shit. So you need like, and I'm not going to know, like I can't see it. I know where it goes. So I need somebody else to read it and tell me. And like some books have come out and people have been like, I saw that coming from a mile away. And some people are like, oh my God, that shocked me in a bad way. Like it wasn't set up at all. So like it'll vary with readers with each book, but also like you can sometimes get that calculus wrong. That's just the reality. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and getting that feedback, because that's the advice I give to every new, like brand new, right? Like someone just getting into writing is like, you cannot create in a vacuum. I'm so sorry. I know we're mostly introverts and you may want
just
to.
Just gonna drink whiskey and sit at my big wooden desk and write to my heart's
and write
content.
the next great American novel.
Yeah,
right. You need to get feedback, right? You need those beta
I'm
readers.
Canadian. I want to write the next great Canadian epic.
The next great Canadian novel? All right, go for it. But I'm curious, Veronica, what point in your outlining process, or is there a point in your outlining process where you seek feedback? So like, for example, I used to, when I had my first agent, I would share a chapter by chapter, like beat sheet of every project before I wrote it with them. Because they liked to, see exactly what I'm working on before they're like, yes, commit to working on this. But with my new agent, I always draft the whole project first. Nobody sees my outline but me. Like, have you experienced getting feedback at the outline stage? And how did that work for you? Did it not work for you? What's the vibe?
Yeah, so this is when like, practicality comes into play, right? So I do try to like share the outline. I'm trying to think of like how to be concise about this. Okay.
You can be verbose about it too.
I know. I'm just like, this is going to be I've written quite a few books now, so I'm kind of like, I think I've only sold 2 on an outline. Because like, once you've established yourself a little bit, which happened to me, surprise, by Divergent, you can sell a book on an outline. And the books I did that with were Chosen Ones and Poster Girl. And then the other ones I wrote like a whole draft before showing it to a publisher. And that was Carve the Mark and the one I'm working on now and Arch-Conspirator, and I'm probably missing some things, but whatever. So my agent is like the safe person to send the outline to. So I send it to her and I'm like, this is what I am thinking about. And if she has huge concerns, like this whole character doesn't work or like this whole plot moment, like it doesn't work, then she'll share them with me. But usually like that doesn't happen. Not because I'm so great, but because she's like, you'll figure it out, like when you're writing it, And then I just haven't loved like only having an outline when I sell a book. I kind of like having it done.
Yeah, that feels like a lot of pressure. I have never sold a book on outline, and I feel like it would stress me out to, you know what I mean? Like the book is
'Cause,
sold,
like,
and now
how much does
contractually
it
I
lock
have to
you
do the first
in?
draft.
Like, how much does it lock
Oh,
you in
that's
terms
true
of like,
too.
this is like the proposed idea, and obviously, like, we've been talking this whole time about how flexible it can be to outline, and how often that the outline that you pitch to them might change quite a lot by the time it gets to the final version that you give them, you know?
Yeah, well, I don't know how it works for everyone. For me, I'm obviously in a very particular situation. So I have like a lot, I enjoy a very privileged position in that usually, like, if I want to throw out the outline, I'm pretty sure they'll let me. That hasn't happened yet. But I don't know how it would go now, but at least like earlier in my career when we were closer to Divergent, that's kind of how it was. So I didn't feel tied to it. I do think probably like it, if you're not in that kind of position, you do have to kind of stick with it. And that is like the main problem with it for me is that it's not that I worry the story will fall apart, it's that I worry I won't love it. Like, and that happened with When Among Crows. Actually, I submitted an outline. It was for like another Greek tragedy retelling, and this one was like set in space. And I got it approved. We had a plan. It had a title. Like it was like gonna happen. And then I was like, surprise! Here's this urban fantasy novella. Bye. And luckily, my editor was like, okay, like we can pivot and figure out how to make this work.
I love that.
Thanks for just like popping in here and then ghosting.
Yeah, right.
Sorry. And I think, yeah, so I don't know what I'm building toward, but basically I'm saying I don't love to share the outline because I think people don't know how to read outlines. Like it doesn't matter who they're like, unless they're a writer. And even then, it's hard to read an event on the page and you're like, I swear it will be cool. Like I know it sounds insane, but like it will be cool when I do it.
Right.
Yes, yeah. And I think it's just hard for people to like get their head inside of your head. So I think that's pretty understandable. But I don't like to expose myself to feedback at that point because I'm like, don't crush the delicate, tiny flame of inspiration before it's become like a sturdy fire. Like I don't snuff it out.
Yes. No, that risk is so real. I feel that.
Because even if it's like with your, I mean, it has to be someone you really trust. Like you can, some people have that relationship with their agent. I would show an outline to MJ because I know that she understands it, but I do agree, like it's kind of like a big risk to share that with someone else or to like sell a book on that. And I think it behooves the writer to get to a point where they are confident in the project, because it's like I'm never confident when I have my outline done. Just like I'm just being super honest. It's like the outline's done, cool, then what does it become?
You're like standing at the base of a mountain looking up at the first draft you have to write.
I'm at fucking base camp with that outline, but there's so much more to do. And it's like the outline, like you said, it's like you can present it as like, I swear this is going to be fucking awesome, and that also happens from
for yourself.
The
Yes.
Yeah. It's
No.
like, I swear to you, it's going to be cool.
Do you guys feel like when you look at the outline, can you feel points of instability? You're like, okay, that might work.
That happened when I translated that like 14 chapter shit show into like more than like, I think it was like more than 40 chapters. And then I even trimmed that down, but I was like, yeah, there are some things here where it's just like, I'm
going to have to do some acrobatics to pull this off. Yes.
Or no, or just completely cut it. Just completely cut it.
Oh, you mean, okay. Well, yes. Yeah. When we're massaging in the outline. But when it's like done and you're looking at it and you're looking at the points where you're like, okay, these are the load bearing scenes and I better pull these off.
Yeah. Or like one time I went to a chiropractor and he did this thing where he like put a little like thermometer on my spine and like it measured hot spots. I don't know if this is science at all. But I think about it all the time because I'm like, there are just always in an outline, there's like these spots where I feel the like, not heat, obviously, but like a lack of clarity. And I'm like, you're going to have to, and now I'm forcing myself, like the way I'm trying to grow right now is that when I write the outline and I feel those points of lack of clarity, I'm like, okay, you need to slow down and like resolve this issue because you can't start writing with this like unclear, vague thing of scaring you in the outline.
No, I'm 100% the same way. It's like maybe sometime there is some heat there if there's like some romantic shit going on, but
me writing a romantic dream outline is like, and then they bang.
Wink emoji.
Oh my god. Yeah, straight up. Like just put a wink emoji in there. Just be like, yeah, pants off.
I'm gonna do that next time.
Oh my god. Well, on that wonderful note, let's wrap this up. Can you offer some final advice for anyone out there approaching? I mean, I hope by the end of this you're not intimidated by outlines anymore, but if you have any advice for anyone out there.
Is it weird that like the more books I write, the more my writing advice becomes like emotional advice?
I adore that.
I am all for it. Yeah.
We all need a little bit of therapy from each other.
Yeah. I think it's super important to hold things loosely. A lot of people get kind of like, especially early on in their writing lives, they become very attached to a particular manuscript. They'll work and rework until they get it right. And I'm like, you won't get it right. It will never feel perfect. It will never feel right. And the way you get better as a writer is to keep moving forward and keep writing things. So I think it doesn't mean you give up on things easily. I'm not advocating for that, or that you don't have passion about a particular project. But I just think like insofar as it's possible to loosen your grip on a particular idea, on a particular scene or character or moment, the better off you'll be, because you'll be able to discover the like really amazing thing behind it. And that's the thing I think we don't emphasize. It's like, kill your darlings. Like, no, like leave room to find the real darling. Like you must let go, because like when you start letting go, then you realize that like you have to trust yourself, that like what happens when you let go is going to be much better than what you held on to so hard. So you have to believe that there will be a better idea behind the other idea. So that's my
why does it have to be about death? Why can't it be about rebirth?
New life.
You know?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Your darlings are phoenixes. They will rise from the ashes of the old darlings.
Like it does feel like a death. I think that's why it's a phrase we hold on to. But the phoenix I like, because it's like you let it die and then you trust that from the ashes, like something else will emerge.
Yes. Beautiful note to end on. We're talking about rebirth here. That's what outlining is. Outlines are all about rebirth. It's all about your story. It's all about your story coming to fruition as it develops. Manifestation, people. Let's get on this shit. I love this. This is a very good masterclass. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is great.
I'm glad you brought up this topic. But yeah, that's it for this mini masterclass with Veronica, our part 2 of 2-part episodes with her. But yeah, just thank you so much for chatting with us today. It's very lovely hanging out with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And where can people find you online?
They can find me on my website, veronicarothbooks.com, or on Instagram at Veronica Roth, or on Substack at, surprise, surprise, Veronica Roth. I'm there. Perfect.
And When Among Crows is out today. Go get it for your fix of The Witcher meets Wizard of Oz. That's
so good.
I'm all about the comps lately, but I feel like if I can pitch someone and like really easily be like, go get this book because it's fucking great. Yeah, go pick that up now. You can also follow SFF Addicts on Instagram, Twitter, all that jazz at SFF Addicts Pod. You can follow me at Adrian M. Gibson. You can pick up my book, Mushroom Blues, in paperback, ebook, and hardcover. MJ, what about you?
Yeah, you can find me across all the main socials, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, whatever else, at MJ Kuhn Books, all one word. Go to my website, mjkuhn.com, and you can check out The Green Baby, The Blue Baby, Among Thieves, Thick as Thieves, and then my story Bible, where you can learn about my really masochistic outlining process that involves Microsoft Excel. So, yeah, exactly. If you are listening to this episode like, I love this, but more torture, check out my... Check out my story Bible.
Torture yourself, support the Thorin Food Fund. We're all good. That's what it's all about.
It's a win-win.
Support MJ's little cat baby.
My
All right.
cat baby.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. Now, keep reading, keep imagining, and we'll see you next time on SFF Addicts.